The goal of thematic immersion is to make players feel like they're living in the world presented by the game, making decisions their character might make, empowered to engage in dangerous or challenging activities that they would never encounter in real life. I'm Adam Porter, I'm a game designer from Wales, and this is the third video I've shared covering a chapter from my new book, Adam in Wales Product Design. You can purchase a physical paperback or download an ebook on Amazon. Immersion is fleeting. Players might become immersed for short periods, but that immersion is likely to wax and wane throughout the duration of the game. Immersion is elusive and intangible. The capacity to become immersed will vary from individual to individual, and the conditions needed to enable that immersion will also vary. So if you're a voracious reader of novels, you might find passages of thematic prose helps you to become immersed. But if you're more of a visual person, it will be all about the artwork. For some, immersion will happen if they're asked to carry out physical tasks, and others will seek a mental challenge in keeping with the theme of the game. And that's pretty much all we've got. Components, mechanisms, artwork, and text. We don't have the luxury afforded to digital games of hiding complex systems, managing bookkeeping, and enforcing game mechanisms. Thematic immersion in an analog game is simply harder to achieve. There is one thing that we have got though, which I haven't previously mentioned, and it's a strength over many digital games. We have each other. Interactions between players can certainly enable and encourage immersion. The lofty goal of designing for immersion is that players momentarily forget they're playing a game and make decisions or carry out actions as if the game's world was real. And in order to achieve this, a game must evoke emotions. Not just joy, but also curiosity, anticipation, competition, tension, even frustration. It needs to be apparent to the players that their decisions are impacting on the in-game world. Okay, he's back. Yeah, this baby doesn't really like to be put down. He likes to cry quite a lot. So if I'm going to get any videos made, I think it's going to be carrying him for a little while. And you'll notice that I'm batch making these videos because I've got to grab any moment I possibly can. So where were we? Hang on, let's have a look. It needs to be apparent to the players that their decisions are impacting on the in-game world, that their characters' actions have thematic consequences, both for themselves and for other players. The narrative of the game needs to be cohesive. For a game to be truly immersive, the logic of the in-game world must be consistent. The available actions should make sense. This is frequently a challenge in tabletop games. So in Agricola, I gather wood so I can build fences. I build fences so I can contain animals. I contain animals so that I can breed them. I breed them so that I can cook them. And I cook them so that I can feed my family. I feed my family so I can have more workers available, and I have more workers available so that I can gather wood. But why can only one player gather wood per round? And why do animals only produce one offspring regardless of the number of parent animals available? And why are vegetables worth more points than sheep? A totally coherent logic is rarely possible, so designers tend to aim for a balance, to minimise logical inconsistencies and interruptions to a game's flow. And there will be interruptions. Shuffling cards, rolling dice, moving counters on tracks, flipping timers, all these things have the potential to interrupt a player's immersed state. There are some aspects which always are going to be likely to inhibit thematic immersion. So complex rules. The real world is complex, so complexity in itself is not a problem. But if it leads to players constantly dipping into the rulebook to find out how a game works, checking player aids or asking other players for clarifications, this will inevitably lift players out of the game's world. Abstract concepts. Most games incorporate win-loss criteria. Unless you're running a race or fighting a battle, most real-life activities don't have winners or losers. The acts of totting up victory points or min-maxing decisions to get an edge over your opponents remind players that they're playing a game. Social interactions. Sitting at a table with friends, it's likely that conversation will sometimes stray from the activity at hand. Stopping to pour coffee for guests or refill the bowl of snacks is always going to shift focus away from the in-game world. Physical components. While digital games can replicate real-life environments in great detail, tabletop games are constrained by the components which come in the box. Unique game components are costly to manufacture, so game publishers frequently fall back on generic components, wooden shapes, plastic discs and printed cardboard tokens. Even the most lavishly produced deluxe crowd-funded edition, packed with hundreds of plastic miniatures, can still only represent a single static pose for each. And frequently, these are supplied unpainted. We rely a lot on our players' imagination to turn a box of cardboard and plastic into something evocative and engaging, a three-dimensional storybook. Publishers commission artwork to support a game's theme. A game board is a large component, usually placed centrally on the table and remaining present and visible for the duration of the game. And the board provides a backdrop for the developing story. It's not a dynamic environment, but it's the best we've got. So if you want immersion, you're going to want to give some thought to the presentation of your board. Strong UX and graphic design is going to help you here. Both can support immersion by making a game intuitive to play. And I feel duty-bound to remind you here, publishers do not expect a lavishly produced prototype when considering licensing your game, so leave them to source the beautiful final artwork. If there's no space in your game system for long passages of thematic text, you might still opt to include a short sentence or quotation, which we call flavour text, onto cards and other components to spark players' imagination and reinforce your theme. So if immersion is your priority, you might wish to start your design process with a theme in mind, as opposed to starting with a mechanism and developing the theme later. A strong theme can act as a foundation for later design decisions, ensuring that game mechanisms support the narrative experience rather than working against it. Designers should avoid mechanisms that feel arbitrary or unrelated to the theme. So the starting point to designing for immersion is identifying your chosen setting. And once that setting is confirmed, you need to define characters and a challenge for them to overcome. The next step is to identify a number of core actions that those characters might carry out in that setting if it was real. And your job as a game designer is to simulate those actions as accurately as possible. But if you're prioritizing immersion, there is a balance to be struck. You're going to need to streamline and simplify actions to ensure there's as few interruptions as possible, as little bookkeeping and busy work as you can achieve. Games often feel most interactive when a lot of the action happens above the table, i.e. players spend their time engaging with each other, even role-playing in character, rather than engaging with game systems. So this video has given you another taste of what you can expect from my new book, Adam in Wales Product Design. And if you want to learn more about creating games as commercial products, you can purchase the book at Amazon as a print-on-demand paperback or as a downloadable ebook. If you read the book and enjoy it, please leave me an Amazon review. So how easy do you find it to feel truly immersed in a game? What can a designer do to make this easier for you? And what design choices get in the way? Let me know in the comments.